Hello. Okay, so we all want to be free, right? But true freedom requires awareness. Freedom is living with agency, agency over yourself, your choices, your life. And most people think they're free, but really they're caged by invisible systems, the patterns, the conditioning, and subconscious beliefs that they've picked up along the way. Some were inherited, of course, some absorbed, some born from survival. And then, without meaning to, they just keep repeating them over and over and over again. Most people live caught inside this subconscious, invisible architecture. They wake up inside the same emotional weather, repeat the same arguments, find themselves drawn to familiar disappointments, and call it a life. A lot of people actually live the same 6 months or year on repeat. Maybe they thought that was the best time of their life, or that's all there is to it, and they're trying to recapture it. But what's really happening is that the subconscious is running the show, essentially, playing old codes of safety and belonging. The same protective beliefs that once helped us survive have quietly become our prisons. People want to be free, but they're not, because freedom requires awareness, and awareness requires courage. The kind of courage that lets you look straight at what has been unconsciously running your life and say, I see you now. Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I've come to think of this as an invitation to wake up, because once you begin to examine your life, to bring consciousness into it, you gain the one thing that changes everything, the ability to choose differently. And choice is the birthplace of freedom. That's what clear is, a practice of self-liberation through awareness. It is a process of repatterning the subconscious with the power of your conscious mind, not through logic or force, but through presence, through immersion, through the sacred precision of your energy. That's what this work is. It's a process of bringing your life into awareness and repatterning it through gentle but radical acts of observation. It's about energetic alignment and precision, not control, not striving, not chasing, but coming home to yourself, your true, authentic self, who you are when all the patterns, conditioning, and subconscious drivers have fallen away. Because here's the truth. There's very little that we can control in this world. Incredible things happen, terrible things happen, and we don't always get a say. But what we can control and what changes everything are our minds and our bodies, the two instruments through which we experience this life, the bridge between the seen and the unseen. And when we take full responsibility for those, for how we think, for how we feel, for how we respond, life begins to reorganize itself around us. And that's what the repattern process inside Clear is all about. It's an easy, repeatable way to bring light to the subconscious, to interrupt the loops that keep you stuck, and to gently rewire yourself toward the life that already wants you. We do not do this through logic, remember that, because logic belongs to the mind and the mind is limited. But through awareness, emotion, and the body. You don't think your way into a new reality, you feel your way into it. The mind, clever as it is, will always try to control. But the body knows how to let go. The body doesn't read your affirmations or your calorie counts or your to-do lists. It reads your consciousness. It listens to your beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, and what you are safe to receive. And it obeys them. That's why pleasure is such an important part of this process, not in a shallow way, but in a really deep, embodied way of pleasure, where pleasure is resonance. The resonance of brightness, of yes, of this feels good. Pleasure aligns you with the beliefs that serve you, beliefs that reality must obey. It's your system's way of saying, this right here is the path. Pleasure is the physical proof of energetic truth. It shows you when you are in resonance with your life. When you follow what feels good and grounded and alive, you begin to live in harmony with yourself. You stop contorting to match external expectations and start aligning with internal precision. So, instead of endlessly psychoanalyzing or rehashing old wounds, we start where you are. We trace the discomfort back to its root, bring awareness to the pattern, and replace it consciously, somatically, energetically. Clearing is absolutely not about erasing the past. It's about integrating it until it no longer holds power over you. That is what clear is about. It's a practical and repeatable process that you can use again and again to return to alignment, to rewire old conditioning and come home to your true self. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to rewire itself through repetition and presence. Every time you choose awareness over urgency, compassion over critique, gentleness over self-punishment, you're literally reshaping your brain. You're carving new neural pathways that make it easier to stay connected, grounded, and open. This is how change becomes who you are instead of something you're trying to do. You start to live in relationship with yourself rather than turning yourself into a project to fix. The mechanics of repatterning are both psychological and spiritual. The psychology is to interrupt the subconscious loop, to see it clearly for what it is. The spirituality is to remember that wholeness was always underneath the loop. And the integration of the two is the art of bringing what's hidden into awareness until it dissolves. Most people try to chase success or clarity or healing as if it's a race, but chasing anything, success, health, alignment, abundance, keeps your nervous system in a subtle state of survival. When you chase, you are signaling to your brain that you do not yet have what you want, what you desire, and the brain listens. It starts problem solving, striving, pushing, keeping you always almost there, but never quite there. Most people teach this work like a staircase. Climb high enough, do the shadow work, and finally you'll be healed. But I teach this as a spiral because you will revisit the same themes again and again, each time from a higher or deeper layer of consciousness. That's growth. Evolution happens in circles, not in straight lines. It's circular, recursive, deepening. You don't rise above what you've been through, you integrate it. And this spiral unfolds through 8 layers, which is the living architecture of clear. First one is C. You start by noticing what's not working instead of judging it. You read your life as feedback. So your relationships, your money, your health, they all mirror what's happening within. You learn to see patterns not as failures, but as messages. And then the second one is trace. You follow the thread back to where it began. So you ask what the pattern was protecting you from, what role it played, and why it's ready to shift now. Most of our limiting beliefs were once forms of love, ways we kept ourselves safe. When you meet them with gratitude instead of shame, they start to release their hold. Next comes feel, which is the part that most of us just haven't been taught. You learn to stay with what arises in your body, the discomfort, the resistance, the fear. You stop bypassing, numbing, intellectualizing, and instead learn to breathe through what is. You create safety where there was none before. Then we go into release. You let the energy move. Sometimes it's tears or writing or shaking or sound. Sometimes it's just a decision. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that it moves. This is emotional alchemy, turning what was once heavy into space, into lightness, into clarity. Then, once you've cleared, you consciously choose what fills that space and we replace. You replace the old story with a new one that reflects your truth. If you once believed you weren't worthy of love, for example, You practice believing that you are safe to receive it. If you've lived in scarcity, you practice the feeling of sufficiency. If you've been playing small, you practice expansion. And then we anchor it all in. You begin to live as if your new reality is already true. You take small, practical actions that embody your new frequency because the subconscious learns through repetition and proof. Each step teaches your system that it's safe to live differently. And then something beautiful begins to happen. We step into radiate. Without trying, without forcing, life starts to rearrange around your new vibration. You attract people, opportunities, synchronicities that match who you've become and who you're becoming. This is how you manifest, not by chasing outcomes, but by naturally becoming the person who creates them. And then, last step, you return, you integrate, you rest, you celebrate. You realize that the work was never about fixing yourself, but about remembering who you already are. Each clearing becomes a homecoming, a return to yourself, lighter and clearer than before. And it's not heavy. Growth or healing doesn't have to hurt. In fact, it can be led by joy and pleasure, and it can feel like relief, like laughter. Like looking at your own absurdity and thinking, of course I did that, how human of me. Compassion and humor are essential in this process because they create the levity that allows information to actually land. Truth isn't fixed. It's fluid, it's shaped by perception, and perception can be re-engineered to serve your desired reality, not through bypassing. We don't want to bypass the human experience, but by fully inhabiting it, your body, your emotions, your choices, with awareness and agency. Because agency is the ability to act without permission, to stop waiting for external validation or the right moment or some sign that you're finally ready or healed enough to begin. To live from the frequency of your future self now. And that's what Clear invites you into. This is the essence of Clear, a process for clearing old conditioning, releasing inherited beliefs, and returning to energetic alignment and precision. A process that helps you stop chasing your potential and really start living it, not someday, but now. A space to stop chasing and start aligning. To stop managing your life from survival mode and start living it from resonance. To build a nervous system that can hold goodness, ease, and joy because you finally feel safe enough to allow it. Alignment is not about getting it right. It's not a formula or a checklist. It's not about controlling outcomes. It's about being with what is while embodying what's becoming. It's the shift from doing into being, from the mind's urgency into the body's knowing. This is what energetic alignment and precision really mean. To let your inner state, your frequency, become the organizing force of your life. To live with clarity, with freedom, with joy, because you finally remembered who you are underneath everything you were told to be. My name is Vienda. I'm a founder, mentor, and creator. I have a background in psychology, and I have spent over a decade working with women around the world to come back home to themselves, their voice, their wisdom, their unique way. I believe that life isn't something that just happens to us. It's something that we also shape with every thought we think, with every belief we hold, with every action that we take. I did not always know that. I came from a complicated background. I grew up in a home shaped by depression and anxiety and emotional volatility. My father passed when I was 10, and for years I traveled the world. I made freedom my highest value, and I created a really beautiful, adventurous life. But eventually I found myself at a threshold. I really wanted more intimacy. I wanted grounding, but I couldn't create it because the old story in my body said, you can only be safe if you have nothing to lose. That belief had to go, and what followed was one of the most intense emotional clearings of my life. It started one night during meditation, and suddenly I felt it, this painful loop of memory and emotion that wouldn't stop playing out. And in that moment, these 8 steps of clear arrived, almost like a download. So the repatterning method that I teach in Clear was born. And over the years, I've used it again and again, obviously with myself, but also with my clients around the world. So now I'm sharing it with you. And I want you to remember that every time you feel stuck, unclear, or in resistance, there's almost always a limiting belief, unprocessed emotion, or subconscious pattern at play. These patterns were usually created during a time that you needed protection. They helped you cope, but now they limit your expansion. You do not need to fight them or shame them. You just need to meet them. And that's what this work does. Welcome to Clear. Let's begin.